help with this. So I vowed that I was going to help him with this. We only do municipal elections or odd years, even years are, state repping up. So in 2019, West Benedict came on board with the three of us, and we did a pilot of this where we just sent letters out to like 15 counties. So we ramped it up to the whole state this year, but let me kind of go through the process. So first thing about Pennsylvania that's unique that most other states probably won't have is we have different filing deadlines for the major parties and minor parties. So the Democrats and the Republicans have to have all their stuff done in February for the primary election, and we don't have to turn in our ballot access paperwork until August 1st. So what we do is we wait until after the primary election. And at that point, we take a look and see where nobody won, where there was nobody on the ballot. And then from there, we can move forward and put libertarians on the ballot in those positions. So we start, and I know that you guys also have partisan registration, and that's been huge in Pennsylvania because we do almost all of our membership recruiting, all of our fundraising. We use that database of registered voters to reach out to registered libertarians to ask them to run for office, ask them to sign up for membership. And we've been using a bulk mail house to get, some discounted rates to do that. So what we do, we first have a team of people who look through the opportunities after the primary and find out where there was nobody on the ballot. And then we take those slots, those municipalities, and our database people, they do a mail merge with the registered libertarians at those addresses. And we send them a letter that says, hey, if you get on the ballot, you'll probably win. Give us a call. We'll talk you through it. At that point, usually Wes and I take most of the calls of candidates who are interested in running for office, and we walk them through how many signatures they're going to need, what the paperwork's going to look like, and then we kind of turn them over to their county committee, for any further support. And, in some counties that works better than others. There were a lot of places where there was no county committee at all. So I just had to manage it from top to bottom and make sure that they were authorized by the state and all the extra paperwork that you have to do as a minor party in Pennsylvania. That's phase one. We put about 120 people on the ballot that way. And then in phase two, we reached out again and said, hey, you didn't get on the ballot, but how about you run write-in? So we know right now that we have at least 130 wins this year. There were another at least 50 candidates mounting write-ins, and the ones that were really serious were standing outside their polling place with cards that basically said, just vote for me, write me in. There's nobody else on the ballot. The ones who did that, most of them won. Some of them just had like 5 or 6 family members write them in, and those ones were like 50-50. So we're not going to know for a few weeks what our entire, win number is because it takes so long for them to tabulate those write-ins. So in 2019, we won 47 elections this way. This year, I think that we're going to win probably between 140 and 150 by the time everything's said and done. You guys will kind of have to fill me in on Colorado's. I know you guys do have partisan registration, right?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest key. Now, do you participate in the primaries there?
Sometimes.
Okay. So, I guess the question, so is your ballot access deadline different than the major parties, or is it the same?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same.
Okay, so yeah, so you guys could probably capitalize on this specifically for write-ins, which honestly makes it a ton easier because you don't have to go through all the petitioning and everything. You would need somebody probably in every county to look through the election results for places where there's nobody on the ballot. And once you find that, and we can probably put you in contact with the IT people who can explain to you how to do this mail merge. We did the first time around, we sent about 5,000 letters. This last time we spent 16,000 letters. So it's a pretty big project, but we found that actually, to do this on a large scale, it was way cheaper to do it through the mail house than to try to have our volunteers stuff them themselves. It just costs less and we didn't have to do all the work. Kevin Gahn, our executive director, and also our treasurer, Nicole Schultz, they're both like whizzes with the mail stuff. And I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you if you don't have that skill set there, because that's US mail. So it'll be the same there as it is for us. And West Benedict's really good with it too. I would think that for you guys, write-in is probably the way to go. If you could find candidates who want, and then, you know, all you need is like 1 or 2 hours at a polling place, if that, handing out cards, and they're probably going to win because nobody else is running. Unless there's somebody who's really dedicated to making sure the Libertarian doesn't win and wants to show up last minute. How many positions you guys would have like that? You'd probably have to, you could probably take a look now, just, you know, your primary ballots from last year. It amazed me. My mom lives in Michigan, and there they don't have partisan registration, so it'd be very difficult to find the Libertarians. But there's so many things like township trustee and even supervisors that just go uncontested. Nobody runs for them. But the other thing that I have to say about it, I feel like I'm rambling here, but we've found that the success kind of begets success. We won contested races that I don't think won a couple of years ago. And we saw Libertarians elected in places where other Libertarians were already serving because they'd kind of normalized it. So like after you've done this for a couple of cycles, you're going to start seeing it become easier to win elections. You start with the uncontested stuff and you kind of start moving your way up. I'm really hopeful that in, 2 to 4 years, we might be able to, move up to the county level and then on to Harrisburg. I think it's very possible. So, any questions or?
So you mentioned that you mailed out like 16,000 letters. Last I checked, even using a mailing service, is a little over $1 a pop. So how did you raise that kind of money?
Our executive director is very good, but honestly, we raised it for this project. And because we used the mail house, it actually ended up costing us about $9,000 to do those 16,000 letters. And so we didn't stuff envelopes. We just wrote the letter, we sent it off to them, and they sent it for us. And we did it in 2 batches. So it honestly probably cost us a little bit more money, because we had 1 batch of 5,000 and 1 batch of 4,000, but we just knew we weren't going to be able to field all those calls.
Right.
We probably had, out of those 16,000, we probably had, I don't know, like 600 or 700 people contact us. And of those, 120 made the ballot. So, most of the people that you touched on didn't actually respond, but, it's still a marketing touch and they still see that you're active. And there's people that, actually contacted us early and said, hey, 2 years ago, I got a letter. Are you doing this again? So people are paying attention. But we went out there, we sent, an email to all of our membership and all the national membership. We put stuff out on social media and we said, hey, we did this in 2019. These are the numbers. It's very successful. This is how much we need to raise. And we raised almost all the money we needed. Just because we had a really good sales pitch that we were going to be able to win these elections with it. And I think if you guys modeled it as, we're following the Pennsylvania strategy and look what they've done, hopefully you'd be able to fundraise in the same way.
Yeah. Using you as an example, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been the vision. I mean, me and Dr. Moulton have talked about this a lot. We've wanted to expand this to other states. In fact, I very well may step down from, LPPA leadership, just because the people here know what they're doing now, so that I can specifically work on advising in other places.
Okay.
I want to see it be successful everywhere,
And then the other thing is you talked about fielding the calls, and you talked about you got most of the calls. So what, it's just 2 or 3 people on the campaign committee?
Yeah, we actually really debated that because, our IT guys wanted to automate things and have it go to a queue. And West Benedict really felt that if we didn't set up like a situation where they could call and get a real person or a real person's voicemail, they may not be as willing to, run for office, or, he wanted them to call and get a live person. West Benedict was like Superman on this. I mean, he's got his booster pack and he took the vast majority of the calls. The way we set it up was we had me and Wes taking calls, and then we had Chuck Moulton answered a heck of a lot of emails, but all 3 of our email addresses were on there, and then just me and Wes's number. I actually set up like a burner app And a lot of people just text me and I would text them back. So I have a day job. I have 2 little kids. I actually am in healthcare revenue cycle management. So I've got a big job. So Wes would get these calls all day long and I would kind of follow behind him and clean up anything he missed. We had a Google Doc spreadsheet that we worked off together where we documented every candidate who called. We kind of got a background on them when we talked to them. We would ask them why they want to run and, how long they've lived where they live, because you have to live there for a year to serve. We'd usually ask them about their occupation, because that's something that we need for our ballot, for our nomination papers. And usually just asking them, why they wanted to run, how they came to libertarianism. That was enough vetting so that we got an idea if they were crazy or not. Most of them were wonderful. I mean, from all walks of life. There was this guy who was involved in this township. He went to every meeting for 10 years. He's going to these meetings and he never thought as a libertarian he'd ever get on council. And, he was well known in his community. He mowed lawns for all the elderly people. And, when he found out that he was actually gonna be able to get on the ballot and win, he was he was already so civically involved, but he just refused to run under a major party. And he's serving in Birdsboro Council now. But we had, doctors and lawyers and chemists and business owners. And I mean, it is amazing the type of people that just came out of the woodwork when you actually interact with that the libertarian population, the people who self-identify as libertarians. And some of the complaints came in that they went to the county for nomination and we asked them what's taxation and they didn't know. It's yeah, some of them can't virtue signal yet. They don't speak the language. They're not going to yell taxation's theft. That was one of the things that, some of the people at the local committees were I don't know about these people. It's well, they're not Facebook libertarians, We did get a few of them. That there was one guy that Wes talked to. What did he say? He said that he thought that cigarettes should be illegal, but marijuana was okay. And we're yeah, you're not going to cut it to run on our... You kind of got to let some people down gently and say, I don't think this is the right position for you. So, and as we get into it, we do let people know that if you have a felony or something, you may not be able to serve, and but that's usually pretty far into the process before we have them getting signatures. For the most part, I would say 98% of the people we talked to were wonderful. Our leaders in their communities, business owners, a lot of them were small business owners. So I was really pleased with the type of people that came to us through these mailings. I mean, they have a desire to serve in office. But the other thing I should bring up is we really had to, Wes is amazing. I can't believe how quickly he just learned all about Pennsylvania ballot access, but we needed to have a good working understanding of each position. I can speak to an auditor about what an auditor does, but we also wanted to find a constable and, somebody in borough council so they could tell, the people who are running for office what their responsibilities would be, not just what's on paper, but in our own words, this is what our job looks like. So, that took a little bit to compile, but once we had it, we were able to actually put it into the form letters and explain to people that, this is how many meetings you're likely to go to and where they can look for the pay for the job and that sort of thing. It's interesting, we elect tax collectors here in Pennsylvania, and we recruited for libertarian tax collectors in 2019 and decided to never do that again. The people who responded were not libertarians. Yeah. We actually do have a guy who his borough had never had a tax collector, and they were saving $10,000 by not having anyone in that position. Somebody tried to run, so he ran against them just so he could resign and save the borough the money. So that guy was a libertarian, but because he ran for collector and resigned. Only one. His name's Stephen Bernays. He lives out in Shippensburg. I'll never forget him. So anyway, other questions?
Good. You talk about the finding slots where there's no one running. Any thoughts on slots where there's an incumbent running and unopposed? Have you had any success there?
Yeah, we actually had a guy running for school board where the incumbent was the school board president, and he ran right in against him as a libertarian and beat him. Like, this was just up in Bradford County this year. It's always more difficult to beat the person on the ballot, but in the right situation, if you put in the work, you absolutely can. It's just a lot of door knocking. You got to have somebody at every poll, and especially if the person's not well liked. I'm telling you, the places where we did run in two-way races, we definitely, our libertarians saw 30%. And that is up from a couple of years ago. We used to get 3% and then we would get 10%. And now we're getting 20 to 30% in these two-way races. With just a Democrat or just a Republican. Like, we're closing that gap. I see it happening. It's like, when you're sitting at my level and you watch the elections year after year, you can see that, those losses are getting closer and closer. So we're winning a handful of those now, but, not obviously as many as we want to.
I think that's pretty close to our percent. If there's two people running, it's usually in the 20s.
Okay.
That's what we usually get. I think that's what you got.
I ran for Auditor General in 2020, and everywhere we had a down ballot candidate, my percentage was like 4 to 5% higher. It's really amazing how when you're able to stack candidates and you have, more than one libertarian on the ballot in a particular place, how much value there is. I think the more that they see our party on the ballot, the more likely they are to vote for us. I mean, that's just been my experience.
So we have a tradition of doing line holder candidates. In what race, we're not going to win, and we find people who don't have time to run a real campaign, and they just get their name on, and then the name's on the ballot, and everybody sees libertarian. Do you guys do that out there as well? Or? Yep.
We absolutely do. That's kind of what I was doing with Auditor General. I'm always our petition drive manager, so I'm like managing the paid petitioners, and I'm on the National Ballot Access Committee too. So, I just didn't have time to run for Auditor General, but I said I'm going to do this because nobody else is stepping up, and if somebody else steps up who wants to switch out with me at the end, I'll gladly give it away. But otherwise, it's going to be a paper candidacy. I did fill out some of the newspaper questionnaires and do a couple of interviews as I could, but I let everybody know I'm going to be a paper candidate because we need somebody in that spot. And I ended up getting the highest vote totals in the state. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Sometimes libertarians just need to shut up, I guess. But it was it amazed me how well that went. But yeah, especially one of the things about Pennsylvania is when we're collecting signatures, we can collect for all the candidates in that district at once. So if we know that we've got a congressional candidate that needs a lot of signatures, there's absolutely, even if that state rep and state senate candidate isn't going to run a real campaign, it's silly not to put a name in there and have somebody on the ballot because you're collecting the signatures anyway.
Right. And so you can go to voters and they can sign for each.
Yeah.
You have to have 7 or 8 different petitions.
Yeah, we can, it has to be by county. So say I'm running for state rep and somebody else is running for Senate and somebody else is running for Congress, and then we've got Senate and governor. They can all be on the same form. That signature counts for all 5 of them. So that's a nice thing about Pennsylvania ballot access too. I know not every state has that.
Yeah, basically any of the state or federal positions, we have ballot access. They just need to fill out the paperwork.
Oh, that's nice. I wish we had that. We have to get 10,000 signatures in even years, and everything else is 2% of the highest vote getter, and every county calculates it different. We have to argue with them.
They're split into sort of 2 different categories: the state and federal, which have to meet whatever the state and federal requirements are, and then everything below, like county, is pretty much considered non-affiliated. So they have to go out, get signatures, and technically they're not supposed to put a party next to it, but everyone asks you what your party is.
Right, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys could definitely capitalize on it for write-in. there's probably no way to get ahead of it other than that, because if your ballot access deadline is the same. But, I'm telling you, we win a lot of write-in races here. And a libertarian serving in office is a libertarian serving in office. And once you get in there and you make the connections, it's going to be pretty easy to win re-election. Most of our libertarians who go for re-election here win their re-election.
Yeah. Yeah, I want much easier once you get the exposure.
Yeah, that's just, you build the connections and everybody in town knows you.
Right. And your write-ins, they don't require any signatures. All
No.
you have to do, but you have to file some paperwork in advance.
What you can here, but you don't have to. You should file paperwork as a write-in in Pennsylvania because it will give you a place to like give uncommon, like wrong spellings of your name. If you do that, that way, if somebody walks in and spells your name wrong, then, at least it'll still be counted for you. But the way to get around that is to, hand out like, what does it cost? Like 10 or 20 bucks for 500 business cards at Staples. I just was out, our executive director ran for auditor for a 6-year term, and I'm pretty sure he won. I was out there on election day handing out his cards, and he didn't want to get on the ballot because he's well known in his township, and he was afraid that they would try to run somebody against him, like even as a write-in, because they would be afraid of him becoming the auditor. So we waited until like noon on election day, and then we hit all the polls. And at that point, they had no way to organize against us. So the township supervisors were not happy to see him handing out write-in cards when they came out to vote. They said, Kevin, what, you didn't tell us you were running. He's like, well, then it wouldn't have been a surprise. So I think he's going to give him hell.
That's right. So he got elected.
Yeah. We handed out, I handed about 80 cards myself for him, and he had about 50 votes at that polling place. So he got elected to auditor. So he didn't want it. There was also constable and judge of elections open in his precinct, but he didn't want one of those jobs because it would have taken him away from ballot access on primary day. That's another one of the really beautiful things here, is because our deadline is after primary day. We can go out there with our petitions, and we have registered voters lined up for us to sign. So we just stand at the polls and get signatures all day. We have works here.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, so what is your view on the ranked choice voting? It just kind of going around here at some municipalities here, like Boulder, and I think Bluefield here just passed that this year. So I don't know if your take on that, pros and cons.
Only caught part of it. It's about ranked choice, right?
Right.
Yeah, we don't have it here. I always hesitate to bring this up in libertarian circles because like every libertarian has a different idea of what it should be, like ranked choice for approval, or somebody brought up like blockchain. Like we tried to have this at a state meeting and it turned into like a fiasco about which one we should support. I would really love to see any version of it. Anything is better than what we have right now. In Pennsylvania, like we don't have ballot initiatives, which make that kind of thing easier. Like it would have to go through the legislators. I think we'd probably really have to lobby. It's a project that I would really love to do, but we don't have it here right now. Only a few states do. I think Maine, Alaska.
Yeah.
It's something that we should be pushing for as a party because it would help all of us quite a bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt us.
Yeah.
Especially approval.
Approval, yeah.
Yeah, see, everybody there has a different opinion about it too.
No, Blake.
Anybody else?
I have a quick question. So how did you, motivate people to run for office? And then were there any campaigns that were a little bit above what, like your general plan of running unopposed races? Like, were there any races where there were more than just libertarian candidate? And if so, how did you get a ground game and get people to actually go out and volunteer and help those people? Because right now we have about maybe 10 people so far who are interested in running for some kind of race for next year, and it's still kind of early, but how do you decide like which are very, not necessarily which are serious, but like if you have a campaign that seems like it may be a very serious contender, how do you generate the resources and attention around that?
It's really, it's a bottom-up organization. So we find that campaigns like that are the most successful are the ones that have a really strong county affiliate behind them. So at the state level in the LPPA, we have really had a huge push to organize more counties. When I was a vice chair, I organized 11 affiliates myself, and it seems like we have a new affiliate like coming on board every few months. Right now, my board, I don't even chair a board, I chair an assembly. We have like 47 reps or something. It's ridiculous because every county, once they get up to enough members, has a board vote. So, I mean, that's really, kind of how we've worked to support those candidates, is to do like membership mailings. Join the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. It's only $20. These are the great things we've done. We give them the list of elected officials. We say our convention's coming up. If you want to be a voting member at the convention, you need to, pay your $20 dues and become a member. In Pennsylvania, to be a member of the party, you have to pay your $20 and you have to be a registered libertarian, or for the convention, you have to be registered. To be a member, you just have to pay the 20. But then once we have them, we send our local committee out to, try to get them involved and get to the local meetings. So we went from, when I became vice chair in 2018, we had less than 200 members. We're up to about 1,500. And that has all been through direct mail. And that's because our executive director is just a direct mail genius. He owns a real estate firm and he built his whole business that way. So he started his very first mailing was just pulling the list of registered voters and, sending them a postcard and saying, hey, come get involved with the party. And then once we had a touch and they reached back out to us, then we would get their local committee involved. So, that generated the fundraising, and it, started building up these committees. So committees that used to have 12 people, now they have, some of them have like 40 and 50 members. I mean, it's sometimes gotten hard to even have meetings because they have too many people. But that when you have a candidate who's local to you, you have that many volunteers, it's really easy to get them the support. So during this time of year, when elections have kind of faded out, this is where we really work on the affiliate building, because those are the people on the ground that are going to help them. The other things we've done at the state level is like we went out and bought a bulk mail permit, because the mail house works really well for our huge 10,000 postcard mailings, but it doesn't really help for a county or a candidate who wants to send like a 200 postcard mailing. So we went out to the state level, we got the bulk permit. It cost us like $900. But now they can actually come to us and buy the stamps, and we can give them the stamps from the state, and it costs like half for their postage. So they're starting to use some of these mail strategies in their counties, saying, hey, we're having a social event, and just sending a postcard to like 100 people, immediately surrounding wherever that venue is to try to draw people in. So if you can get enough people into your committees, then you have the boots on the ground to go work the polls and to step up to be contested candidates. And at their meetings, sometimes they just pass that and everybody throws in $5, and that's enough to get, their local candidate their literature. So that's kind of how we've done it. It's been, just trying to feed the resources to our local groups, because from the state, central planning doesn't work. Like we can't really send resources. We can't send people from one side of the state to the other for a candidate and pick and choose. They'd have our heads for that. You guys look like you have a good group for a November meeting. Usually after election day, things taper off. So.
Well, wait to see us next November. We're going to take a lot of your stuff apart. You'll be back here next November going, whoa. Yeah,
I'm telling you, the fact that you guys have that registration there, if you can get a list of those people, we can get phone numbers sometimes. And we have phone numbers. We've had phone banking stuff too, just saying, hey, I'm from the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. We just wanted to, invite you to our next county meeting, or, invite you to join the party. Most of the time, just leaving messages, and, you leave an email address or something if they want to call you or text you back. Every once in a while, you'll get someone on the phone. Sometimes they'll be like, I left the party when Arvin Vora said, and you're like, okay, well, I get it. You're going to get a few of those. And I'm re-registering independent just because you called me. But, that's like 1 out of 100. So it's, so we've done, the phone banking. I found that, when you do like social media outreach, you need to touch like 4,000 people before you get a hit. You can boost ads and the whole 9, and you just have to get a lot out there. When I do email, it is usually like 1 hit in like 200 or 300. Once you get down to mail, it's like 1 in 100. And when you do phone, it's like 1 in 25 or 30. I mean, that's my personal experience. I don't know what the national statistics would be, but that's how many people are responsive to you when you, and then, even better, sometimes if we have a candidate running locally, we'll go door to door and, have a walking list where we know where the registered libertarians are, and we'll knock on their door and say, hey, will you sign for me to get on the ballot? And at the same time, we give them literature about their local county.
We did some phone. We got a candidate signed up in the county because we reached out to all the libertarians and signed up times for him to go to their houses to get signatures. Yep. And then we signed up a bunch of lapsed national memberships by doing the phone bank in the last couple of days, and matched what we had our previous max. So we might have gotten a record, but I don't think so. But so we did have pretty good success in that.
Yeah, we found it to be pretty successful too. It's just, a good strategy as long as you have the people who are willing to do it. And we found that if we do it in groups, it's better. If you just all sit at home and say you're going to do it, nobody will ever pick up the phone. You have to get together somewhere and just make the calls. Once you make the first few, it's not hard.
Oh, so you advocate having a whole group come together and do phone banking?
Mm-hmm. We have done we have a Discord for our membership committee. They actually had a call to liberty on Saturdays, from noon to 2, where just a group of people would get together and, Discord, and they would divide up a list and they would call expired members, either expired LPPA or expired national. And they would just go through that list, and they worked through that, I think, last summer, and had pretty good success with getting people signed back up. I think that, the big thing that we've been so successful is because we're doing the phone banking, we're doing the mailings, we're constantly doing something. We have a new project as soon as the last one finishes. And even if it's only an hour on the weekend, that you have sometimes only 2 or 3 people show up, but we've been pretty consistent with making sure we're doing those marketing touches.
I guess I wonder quickly, what kind of positions are people running for the most? I mean, the auditor.
Yeah, the main 2 are auditor and constable. We have a ton of those. So auditors, they are the ones who, look over the financials. It's not a decision-making position, but they're kind of the fiscal watchdogs. They're making sure that everything is spent on what it's appropriated for. The contract are not going to people's cousins, and they also set the pay for the supervisors, so that's interesting when you have a libertarian there. And then constables, they actually keep the peace at the polls, but they also can do court work, serving warrants and transporting prisoners. And a lot of libertarians don't feel comfortable doing it at that level unless they're in a position where they can reject the warrants that they don't want to serve. So it depends on, whether the court's going to make you take everything or is going to let you pick and choose. A lot of times whether libertarians are willing to do it. If we expanded this, which we could, we would have hundreds and hundreds of judge and inspector of election positions. We didn't send a mailing for that because we didn't have the resources, but hope that we will in 2 years. But it would have been twice again as many letters as we sent. But those are the people who ensure elections integrity at their polling place on election day. They're the ones who send people in, and so that's really important. We also we had out of our 16,000 letters that we sent, about 10% of them were council, supervisor, school board. So those were the ones we really wanted to hit hard. We actually like followed up with phone calls on those ones in addition to the letter to ask them to run for office, because those are decision-making positions. About 10% is decision-making, but and we won quite a few school boards. We won a handful of council. I think we got one supervisor. So we have 3 mayors. So that's a big deal too. They were all uncontested. Nobody ran for mayor. So,
It must be like a real-
That's a lot.
That's amazing.
That is great.
one of those people is going to be who goes on to win state rep, somebody who was mayor in one of these small boroughs, because they have the experience, And even though the constables, even if you didn't do anything but serve on election day, now you still have constable on your resume. So when you run for sheriff, voters are like, oh yeah, they were a constable, at least that's the hope.
Right. And if nothing else, it's visibility. I mean, there's people in Colorado interested in it. So I'm sure you got lots of people in your state interested, libertarians.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, it's really, a lot of people say that they don't feel they're qualified, the candidates. And that has been kind of one of my jobs is that, if Wes or Chuck gets a tough one, they kind of pass them off to me to, give them the pep talk and tell them that they are qualified to run. Because really for most of these positions, the willingness to serve is all you need. The training is not a high barrier. I mean, they're government jobs, come on. So, even auditor, you're on a board of 3. Usually only one is elected at a time. So you've got 2 experienced people and you've got the township manager and there's training at the state level. Most competent people can audit the books. So I usually am there to let people know that you can fill this role. It's not going to be a huge time commitment that's going to take you away from your job. It's going to be, a couple of nights a year, unless you really want to put in your all and go to all the township meetings and ask questions about how they're spending money. You can and should do that, but you don't have to. I do that. They mostly like me, I think. At least they pretend they do to my face. But it's amazing. Call me and ask me questions. We had some constitutional amendments and the chair of the local Democrats called me to ask me what the libertarian position on it was. And I'm like, you're not going to like this, John. And he didn't, but he still wanted to hear. So that was one thing we couldn't ally with him on, but on other things, sometimes we can, so.
Yeah, so they treat you more seriously when you're out there doing it.
Yeah, they do. They take you much more seriously. I mean, otherwise they think that we're, mythological creatures that just live on the internet. So, social media is not, kind to any party. It doesn't, show our best and our brightest. So.
Any other questions?
One quick one. Have you guys has any of your members started any PACs in Pennsylvania to try and sort of help create funding for the party? Or that might for candidates?
Well, that is interesting because I'm actually, talking with a group right now who's thinking about doing just that. Of course, the Mises PAC is based here, so they do help out some of our local guys, but they are, more nationally focused. I don't know if they gave any money to candidates here this year. I didn't look and see, but so that's, the big PAC here. They kind of have, they're kind of running the show as far as PACs right now, but there's another group that's looking specifically to raise money for candidate support and to be a not-for-profit, all about, passing on some of these lessons that we've learned, because there's so many people who've gotten good at this in Pennsylvania and we kind of feel like we need to share it. So I think that, the Pennsylvania Liberty PAC, or, that's what they're looking at calling it, but I think you're going to see it really soon. We've looked at it and the barriers are not high. Wes Benedict's booster PAC does the same. He hasn't helped us particularly financially, but he's helped us with hours and hours and hours of his time. I know that he helps other states. I think we're going to see more of that because I think that people aren't so scared of federal PACs like they used to be. I mean, I've looked at the paperwork. It doesn't look bad.
Well, thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I really look forward to, hopefully talking with people about this. When is your deadline for ballot access? Or it's in the spring, I assume.
April 16th is the deadline that all candidate paperwork has to be in by.
Okay. All right. So then you'll know what the, who's going to be on the primary ballot probably shortly thereafter.
We have to vote at the convention, although I think the plan or the hope is anyone who's running unopposed can just sort of get voted on at one
Get voted
slate.
in. Right.
There
Well,
are some that have to get primary if there are contenders.
and then your primary will be like May.
Somewhere around. It changes.
So you guys should probably, somebody get a hold of me in, May after the primary, like after the write-in results and everything are tabulated, if you do write-ins, and we can maybe look and pull a couple of counties and see what we can find and if we can come up with a strategy. It would, and we can pull Dr. Moulton or Wesson too and see, if we can, come up with a pilot to try to get some people to run for you guys using the Moulton maneuver. I would love to see it, even if you only do a few. I don't know if you'll have municipal elections this next year. Do you guys do them every year or just every other?
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
This year, May.
The city council is on the odd years, right? It's school board and city council are odd years, and then state positions, Congress, and county positions are all 8 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Jefferson County, we've already looked at everything that's in Jefferson County, and we're already strategizing in Jefferson County.
Yeah, all the city
Great.
council ran unopposed this year, so all
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, so you're definitely gonna have some opportunities. And I'm telling you, it's a lot easier to win if there's one person running unopposed than it is if you're running against 2 people.
That's
Oh,
what's
yeah.
gonna happen this again.
Our state convention is March 12th. If you feel like coming out to Colorado for it, you're more than
I would
welcome.
love to. It's after ours. I would love to. I love Colorado. It's my favorite place to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe, I would move there, the higher mountains, if my husband would ever leave, the suburbs of brotherly love, but his family's here. But I'll definitely consider coming out to you guys' convention, and if I can make it, I will. But definitely, get a hold of me in May so that we can take a look, or May or June, so we can take a look at, you'll be able to find them as well as I can, but I can put you in contact with the IT people who can explain the mail merge stuff and, the technical part, and also give you examples of the letters we use for write-ins. You can kind of see, an example of how we set it up, and you can, edit it to your county.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great to be copied to those letters.
Yeah, we definitely have them. So, and as you found out when you were trying to get a hold of me, just keep pinging me if I don't answer. I'm probably traveling somewhere. So anyway, you guys probably have real business to get through tonight too. And I've already taken almost an hour, so I should probably let you go. And I've got another meeting with a group of my state people here at 10. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's 2 hours later. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, it is. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you.
all right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.